Okay. Salud. Welcome to the 2020 New Mexico Election Candidates Forum. My name is Arturo Uribe, and I'm one of the members of Citizens for Nonpartisan Civic Engagement. We're here today with our commentators and with our candidates from District 37. Today we're going to sit there and talk about the issues and concerns in the district. I believe we have a map. The district is from Sierra County along I-25 all the way to the county line and then up towards Otero County. The district is made up primarily of Mexicano voters, or Mexicanos and the citizens make up about 43%, and then there's about 39% white, and the district is pretty well balanced there. So the issues and concerns, this is an opportunity for you as a citizen live on Facebook to questions. We'll be streaming it on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook Live. But on Facebook Live, you'll be able to ask the questions. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce my commentators. Shirley.
Thank you, Arturo, and to the listening audience. I'll pull my mask down a little bit here so you can hear me. I'm E. Shirley Baca, and I'm one of the commentators here tonight, along with Marcy Dickerson. I want to thank Arturo and Marcy for giving me the opportunity to be the first one to ask the question. And the reason I wanted to be the first is that last week, if you had the opportunity to tune in, there was several of us commentators that are going to be throughout the next 10 interviews that we're going to have, and we talked amongst ourselves what we thought was important in elections and what is important to the public. And one of the things that came out is that a lot of times people like to talk about the politicians or the candidates. And in reality, it's public servant. Candidates and the elected official are public servants, and Kelly McConnell used the word servant leader. And that was really important, and I wanted to bring this up because last week we lost one of the most prolific and profound servant leaders that this country has ever known, and that is Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she was a woman on the High Court, a woman of integrity, of intelligence, and commitment to what she did. And one of the things she said that I want to repeat here today, because I think it's a good segue, is she said, when you fight for what you believe in, don't just fight for yourself. Fight for others. Fight for your community. And that being said, my question to both of you today...
Wait, we're going to go ahead and allow Marcy to go
okay,
ahead and
I apologize.
introduce yourself.
That was fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize.
I'm just sad I have to follow you now.
Okay.
We're introducing the commentators, and I'll go ahead and give the...
And then we'll do the questions.
Then I'll get the candidates, and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, that's fine.
All right.
So I thought that was an amazing lead-in, especially with all the things that we're dealing with currently and the passing of Justice Ginsburg. My name is Marcy Dickerson. I'm a business owner, philanthropist, and entrepreneur here in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I'm very excited that thank you for offering to allow me to be here today. We look forward to getting to these questions with our candidates, because again, the biggest comment and the thing I think we're all looking for is, once they are elected, how will they serve our community? How will they take care of the people in our community that may not have the voices that can be heard as far and wide as Santa Fe? And how will they make our community better? And I know we're all looking forward to hearing our candidates' answers and to help us give some information so we can make some very important decisions as Election Day approaches.
Right on. Thank you very much, and I appreciate what you guys have said. It is important for us as the voters and the citizens that live in the district to have this opportunity, and due to the pandemic, it's been quite, way different. But with that, I'd like to go ahead and, Senator.
Thank you. I'm Bill Souls. I'm currently a state senator for District 37, and you characterize District 37 as going up the Sierra County line, but the best characterization is it's the East Mesa side of Las Cruces. It's mostly an urban district with some rural areas to it. And when I'm in Santa Fe, I always get to brag about this beautiful district and that I represent the Organ Mountain area of Las Cruces. And I tell people the Organ Mountains, here in New Mexico or in Las Cruces, we're very possessive of our mountains. You don't talk about the mountains, it's my mountains, our view. And we're very proud of that all the time. So it really is the East Mesa Organ Mountain area of Las Cruces. I'm running for re-election. I've been your state senator for 8 years. And when people ask me, how do you like being a senator? And I often will tell them, I'm a teacher and I'm an educator. Being a senator is my public service. It's not who I am. I still continue to teach. I was teaching in March when we shut down with COVID, and I finished the school year doing virtual and online education with my students. Just last week, I was up at Oñate High School where I was teaching the AP government class for the day. It was online, so I was not technically at Oñate High School, but with the AP government students for all 6 periods of the government classes, and talking about real government, real things that are going on, and how government affects them directly, not just what they see in the textbooks or what they see on TV, but what really happens in government. And so thank you very much for inviting us. I'm glad to be here. I look forward to an opportunity to talk about legislative priorities in this District 37. Yeah. Thank you.
I think you keyed in on something that is very true around this area. It's like my tia, it's my grandma, It's
very possessive.
Yes. Dave.
My name's Dave Gallus. I'm running for New Mexico State Senate District 37. I'm challenging Senator Souls for that position. I'm a Philadelphia boy, grew up in Philadelphia. I was a Philadelphia policeman for 25 years. and then I had a small career, 13-year career with the U.S. Postal Service in New Jersey and various cities for about 13 years. I'm a father, grandfather, and I'd like to make a change what I see as problems in government in New Mexico.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll go ahead and Shirley, now you can ask the question.
Oh, well, thank you, and I apologize for jumping the gun, but I think both Senator Souls and Challenger Gallus both said the fact that you both are here for your community and you want to do public service. That being the case, I want to know why you think you're the best candidate for this district, and what specifically would you like to mention that you would do to serve your community? And I guess we could start with
Dave.
Dave.
Well, I know that Senator Souls has been the top legislator in the state in education, 4 years as the vice chairman and now as the chairman, and New Mexico is in poor shape. I believe we're in last place in pre-K through 12th grade in education. So I know I can't do any worse than that, and I'm sure I can do much better. So that's one thing. But also education, not necessarily about our children, but our electorate, the people that can vote. It's so important that people actually get out to vote. You have to be registered to vote, but also know who you're voting for. Senator Souls has a record. He's got an 8-year record as a legislator. He's sponsored, co-sponsored, and voted on certain bills. My track record is you'd have to contact the Philadelphia Police Department and the U.S. Postal Service and do whatever investigation you have to do, but it's so important that you actually know who you're voting for and what their values are.
All right, Senator?
And thank you, and I appreciate the question because I'm very proud of my record in the New Mexico Senate. I was vice chair of the Senate Education Committee, which is one of the two chairs for education, or the education committees. In the last 4 years, I've been very proud to serve as the chair of the Senate Education Committee. As a result of that, I've carried some of the legislation in just the last year or two that the governor called the moonshot on education, where we put more than $500,000 of new money into, $500 million, not a million, $500 million of new money into education. Now, when the COVID crisis hit, it wiped a bunch of that out. We went back into special session and had to pull back on many of those initiatives. But through the first 6 years that I was there, we had an administration that was not very friendly towards education. And we worked very hard on trying to push those. And during that time, I continued to put efforts into trying to increase the funding in education. And while New Mexico is last in education, it is also one of the lowest funded in education. We have some of the lowest teacher salaries in education. We have high rates of poverty. All of those contribute to those low levels. Lots of that has to do with other systemic problems within New Mexico dealing with poverty issues that we have not been very good at addressing. And I want to continue to be a state senator because I still want to address those. I first ran for the legislature because children don't have a voice in Santa Fe. And as a teacher, as an educator, I can be that voice for the children, for the parents, for the teachers, so that they have a strong voice, because if New Mexico is going to get out of being at the bottom of education, we need leadership in education that's going to change that. That's why I want to run for re-election.
Right on. Thank you very much. All right, Marcy.
And thank you, sir, for an excellent transition to my question. So as we talk about funding, we know that a large majority, 34% of our general fund revenues come from oil and gas, and much of that money is used toward education. Many candidates in New Mexico are huge proponents of not only becoming more dependent upon renewable energy, but also moving away entirely from oil and gas. As 34% of our general fund revenues of the state come from oil and gas, how do you anticipate, or how do you plan on helping us fill the gap by if we get rid of oil and gas?
And thank you for the question, because that comes up a lot in how we look at things. And first, we've got huge budget problems that we're going to have when we go into Santa Fe because of COVID and how we're going to deal with those. And so your question really is a little bit further down as to how we're going to deal with the first issue and then long term. Oil and gas has been wonderful for the state of New Mexico. It has built lots of New Mexico. It's provided for many years. But we now have better opportunities to do that protect New Mexico's land, air, and water while still transitioning over to clean energy. Some of the main things that businesses want when they relocate to a state is they need energy sources that are inexpensive. They need access to human resources, people, and they need to be able to move goods and services are the key things. And New Mexico has the second best solar potential. We have the sixth best wind potential in the country, and we've barely begun to tap into those resources. I would propose that we go full out to tap into those, and we should be pumping electrons onto the Western grid all day long when the sun's shining here in New Mexico, and use that revenue to build the state, to fund the future of New Mexico. It's cleaner, it's cheaper energy than oil and gas for electricity. We should be doing that right now.
All right, Dave.
I disagree with the senator. I think we need to promote the oil and gas industry. I think we also need to open up the four corners and make sure that we're using that coal. I mean, we can put men on the moon. We can't clean up coal. I know we can. And also, there's an organization, there's a company that will sequester that CO2 that's produced from the coal, and they want to use that in other productions. So there's a way to use this. I know there's technology that can work. We're never going to be able to make up the profit loss that we had when we want to shut down oil and gas. It's not cost effective. The sun doesn't shine all the time, the wind doesn't blow all the time, and you do not have energy storage capacity and batteries to power what, a city? It's impossible. And you have to get rid of the components of the solar power and the wind power. That stuff goes into landfills, doesn't decompose. It's not realistic to think that we're ever going to make up that loss that we had. There's going to be a boom cycle and a bust cycle in the oil and gas industry. We didn't do well with putting money away when we were in a boom cycle. So when it goes bust, we're in big trouble. We had a $4 billion surplus of money from the oil and gas industry, and that was spent, and taxes were increased as well. To me, New Mexico is the third richest state in the union in natural resources and minerals. But we could do a whole lot better with utilizing those resources, which we're not doing. So I say that we continue with oil and gas, get those 450 jobs that were lost in the Four Corners area, and clean up coal, clean up oil, clean up gas. So every time you're going to use that, the fossil fuels, make sure some of that money's in there to make it cleaner.
Right on. Shirley.
I just wondered if Senator Souls had a response to the question, to the response that David had, because I think I heard you say that they could each engage in each other's
if there was something more you wanted to say.
I
just wanted to comment that the technology for renewable energy, there is battery storage now. Battery storage plus solar panels plus battery storage, or wind plus battery storage, is the cheapest energy source there is. The whole world is quickly transitioning away from oil and gas, so it's not shutting it down, it's transitioning away from it to cleaner forms of energy that don't require expensive cleanup mechanisms to protect our land, air, and water.
All right.
Okay, so based on what you said, Mr. Gallus, do you believe, I see what's going on in the Permian Basin on the east side of the state. There's been a lot of land destruction per se. There's a cavern over there, Carlsbad Cavern, and there's been some holes and potholes and water villages. Fracking has caused a lot of destruction on our Mother Earth. Do you believe that climate change is man-caused? And how should we respond to people who think it is? Because I hear both. Some don't believe it is, and some believe it is. And what could we do to counter these effects? You did mention things like that we could open up the Four Corners and clean up coal and use the CO2. I believe you're talking about carbon sequestration,
yes,
which is being used in Tennessee and the Carolinas, etc. We don't have that sequestration technology here yet, but what do you think about climate change, and what can we do to negate these negative causes from the gas and oil industry?
Well, first of all, I think climate change, man-made climate change, is a hoax. I believe that when you hear this 97% of scientists, to me that's 97% of selective scientists that want to press an ideology. to me, climate change occurs naturally. It's cyclical. It's not man-made. You've had volcanoes that can negate all the climate change measures that you took in one single volcanic action. You know, they say that CO2 is a major problem. Well, actually, we're at about 415 parts per million CO2 right now. If we get to 150 parts per million, plants die. If plants die, we die. Our plants actually are starving for CO2. When you have a greenhouse, they pump CO2 into that greenhouse to better produce the seeds and the plant growth. The bottom side of a plant has things called stoma, which is how they breathe CO2. We breathe out CO2, plants breathe in O2. We breathe out CO2, plants breathe in CO2. Anyway, the stoma have to open up because there's not enough CO2, and then the plants need more water because they're evaporating. So this, to me, this is a hoax. I said there's scientists in Las Cruces that meet at Pepe's, at Valley and Picacho every month. If you want to hear about real scientists, go sit in and listen about real scientific information about man-made climate change.
Senator Souls, same question to you.
Climate change is not a hoax. Just this week, the measurements indicated that the carbon dioxide levels in the air are the highest they have ever been, not in recorded history, but in the history going back 20 million years, long before there was man. It is clearly caused by man. We know what causes it. It is not a hoax. It is absolutely true. And the fact that there are a few scientists who can cherry pick, and I've heard some of the ones that Mr. Gallus talks about, that cherry pick some of the data, the vast majority of climatologists, not weathermen, not others, indicate it is man-made, that it is rapidly increasing, and we see it across the planet, and it's having catastrophic effects. Nobody is going to say that climate change caused the fires we're seeing in California, but the hazy air in Las Cruces right now is a result of some of the climate change that is causing our forests to burn, that is causing our ice caps to melt. It's causing serious problems for animals at different levels, and if we don't do something about it, we've got serious problems. And to claim that it's a hoax is, quite frankly, is frightening, because we need to deal with this now if we're going to get ahead of it. And coal is the dirtiest of fuels, and the coal plants in the Northeast did not shut down because of other things. They shut down because they're not economical. Other forms of energy are cheaper than coal, and to spend more money on coal is a fool's errand. So, thank you.
All right, Marcy.
Speaking of economics, you're just teeing them up here tonight. Just teeing them
My
up.
job.
Speaking of economics, so we talked earlier about education, needing more money. We're talking now about oil and gas and the economic future of New Mexico. So let me ask you this question. Are you satisfied with where New Mexico's economy is? And what plans or what can you advocate for or plan to advocate for to increase our economic health in our state?
Thank you, and that's a great question. And no, I'm not pleased with where our economic health is. When oil is good, we are living high. When oil is bad, we are having problems. And I've regularly told people we would be better off to have a lower average price of oil that is consistent than to have a higher average but that goes up and down all the time, because it's those huge swings that cause havoc with our budget. What I would recommend, and particularly for the Las Cruces area, is we need to look at those things that New Mexico has advantages that no one else does. Through an accident of geography, New Mexico, and particularly Doña Ana County, sits at the crossroads of a continent with transportation north-south and east-west. And the logistics of moving goods and services across the border from Mexico and north up I-25 and then across I-10 from California and east is unprecedented other places, and I think untapped. We've started to do some of that down in the Santa Teresa area, but I think we could promote that a lot more. Some things that I really would like to do, it's not my area of expertise, but is to put a heavy truck road on the West Mesa that comes in at the Loves up at the top there to get those trucks into New Mexico rather than having to go through El Paso first and all the time that it takes, and use that to build logistics and transportation at this crossroads of a continent that's an accident that's for the good fortune of New Mexico.
Okay. Dave.
First of all, I think that we know that oil and gas is a boom and a bust cycle. When we have the boom, we should salt some money away, a good portion of that money away for the bus cycles. And I think the big problem we have in New Mexico is that we are top-heavy with government, state government employees. We have twice as many state government employees per 10,000 people as Texas. Texas is successful. Texas is also run by Republicans. New Mexico is run by Democrats. Now, business is very important. We are not a business-friendly state. We are a welfare state. So if you want to bring businesses into New Mexico, you follow Governor Abbott's lead. He goes and solicits companies in California, New York, I'm sure, and he says, okay, we're going to give you tax breaks, or we're going to limit the regulations that you have to deal with when you come in here. We're going to bring businesses into New Mexico, and instead of state government employees getting paid and taking money from the state, we're going to have businesses that will actually bring money in the form of taxes, and it's going to employ people. If we employ people locally and the kids get a good education, if the education improves, then they can stay locally. They can stay with their families. They don't have to leave the state when they get their education. Businesses, education, it's all going to work together. But you have to have the right legislators to promote businesses and not expand government.
All right. Shirley?
Mr. Gallus, part of the promoting the businesses and the economy in any local geography, whether it's Las Cruces, Doña Ana County, and specifically District 37, which is what you're running for, you need to have infrastructure. And the infrastructure is what allows for a particular governor to go out and get these businesses. You're from Pennsylvania. You saw the boost and the boom and the bust in Pennsylvania of what happened to a lot of the local businesses there. That being the case, what would be your idea or your efforts for the capital outlay needs and the infrastructure needs for District 37?
I would say District 37 as well as the whole state. We are the third richest state in the union in natural resources and minerals.
What is your capital, excuse me for interrupting, I want to know what are your specific capital outlay needs, which is very, very specific and unique to elected senators in the legislature?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, that's very important. You need to know what it means if you want to be a senator. Senator Souls?
Could I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
I haven't been in the legislature yet, so for me to know what my specific outlay will be, I would have had to been in the legislature, and that's kind of an unfair question. Senator Souls has been there for 8 years. I haven't started yet. What I'll say is I will manage your money well, and there's money out there. It's not a matter of not having enough money. It's mismanagement of money.
Okay.
And thank you for the question. Capital outlay is each legislator, depending on what's available, and lots of that comes from the extractive industries and things. So as a legislator, we've had some years where there was no capital outlay money, that we've had some years where there was up to $1 million for senators that they get to use in their district for meeting capital projects and needs. And capital projects and needs are, you can't spend them on salaries, you can't spend them on consumables, it's for building types of things. Within District 37, we have serious, serious flooding problems up on the East Mesa. We have problems as the city continues to grow up that direction with roads that need repair and fixing. We have problems up in that area with people that are still on septic tanks as their neighbors are now moving on to the city sewage systems. And so I have continued to put money into capital outlay to remedy those problems, mostly up on the East Mesa. But also parks within Las Cruces that build the quality of life is part of the needs. In District 37, it's the most rapidly growing area of New Mexico, and all of those developments need parks for children to play in. They need facilities for seniors. They need facilities and swimming pools for children to play in, and they need recreational areas. All of those are my priorities for spending capital outlay money when it's available to meet the needs of the district, of the people in District 37.
All right, I want to ask a question also myself on that. But before I do that, I just want to just remind or let the viewing audience know we have the folks here socially distant, and there's plexiglass in between them. We're doing our best to abide by the governor's orders. But going off of the question in regards to infrastructure, you're familiar with what they call the colonias, and so my question is, every year we have to fight, go up to Santa Fe and advocate for that. I know where you stand, Senator Souls, but Dave, do you understand what the colonias are and the needs and the infrastructure? Are you familiar with the colonias?
Well, I believe
Infrastructure Trust Fund?
I believe the colonias are ancient cultures, Hispanic cultures that are within 100 miles of the border, and there are certain grants, money that's allocated to those colonias from the government to help them improve infrastructure as well as other things. Have I got that right?
No. Well, it's something that we created with the Colonias Initiative about 10, 12 years ago, where New Mexico has a fund for it. We share it with the native indigenous tribes here in New Mexico, right. And each year it goes to the infrastructure needs of our communities. But each year they're trying to take money away from it or even dissolve it.
Who is they?
Other elected officials. So can we count on your support if you guys are elected?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Within District 37, I think we have one colonia which is up around the Butterfield Park area. And I meet with them regularly and talk about their needs. And that's where lots of the needs for particularly the flood control for those areas and the roads areas up there, where the local community doesn't have enough taxing wealth in order to do it on their own. They are outside of the city limits. The county has numerous colonias and is overextended on their ability to meet it. And so that's where I was indicating that I put lots of my additional capital outlay money to meet those needs where the needs are greatest.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead with Marcy.
Last economic question, then we'll switch to something else. So we've talked about the need, Senator Souls, you spoke about that we have some amazing attributes here and resources in our state, that we have the ability to move things. We have, you spoke about solar power, you spoke about wind power and those types of things. So what I would like to talk about is our minimum wage. So we know that currently in Las Cruces, our minimum wage is much higher than the state, but our state still has a pretty high minimum wage as compared to our neighboring states. Many of the businesses that are looking to come here certainly evaluate that. And a lot of them we have lost to our close neighbor, El Paso, because it's only 40 minutes and they have all the benefits we do. So tell me a little bit about how you plan to balance the minimum wage argument with the need for economic development in our state.
And thank you for the question. In my first session up in the legislature, I was one of the sponsors of the minimum wage to move it to $8.50. It got all the way through the legislature, and the governor vetoed it on Good Friday. The current minimum wage is, and I'm trying to remember, but it's at 10, but it's going to escalate to 12. The Las Cruces one's above, but the state one's going to pass it in a year or two. They are indexed to the CPI, which means that they will continue to have the same buying power that they've had in the past. The minimum wage that is in El Paso and other places has not been raised, nor the federal one, in years, even though the buying power has been greatly reduced. Minimum wage is the most studied economic issue in the country. It is studied more than any other issue, and it is very clear from that research that reasonable increases in minimum wage do not harm businesses overall and do help the poor people make enough money that they're able to survive. It is a minimum wage. It is not a living wage. Living wages would be on the order of $15 to $20 an hour, where New Mexico, the local one, is still at 10. The New Mexico one, they're going to escalate up towards 12, which is still a minimum wage. I'm in support of reasonable increases to the minimum wage and then an escalator that keeps the buying power the same based on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, as it goes forward, so that we don't have this fight and argument over and over and over again.
All right. Dave.
I think the minimum wage is a big mistake. I do know that minimum wage for entry-level jobs should not be touched. When you get the government involved in anything, it screws it up. Free market enterprise system will set the level of pay. You know, when a McDonald's employee, it's not supposed to support a family. Like Senator Soul says, it's not a living wage. That's true, and it's not supposed to be. It's an entry-level job. It's probably for young students that are starting out. It can be for seniors that are retired, that are already having a pension or whatever. It only costs about $3 an hour to have a robot flip hamburgers at McDonald's. You wonder why there's a lot of self-serve cashiers at Walmart and other places like that. It's because it's cheaper to have a machine do something that a human being could do. You're not paying for maternity leave. You're not paying for sick days. You're not paying for a lot of things. When you install a minimum wage and you guarantee it, the government guarantees it, you're going to lose businesses. And I don't know where the senator's getting his stats, but it does hurt businesses. It hurts many businesses.
All right. With that, we're going to take a break, and we'll come back. Thank you very much for tuning in and to the 2020 New Mexico Candidates Forum election. Thank you.
When I think of MVT, I can't help but think of the finest trucking company in the U.S. They provide a driver experience like no other. From regional routes to great pay, they make it a priority to make sure you feel right at home. As a truck driver, there are several companies to choose from, but I decided to drive with MVT, where they have state-of-the-art equipment and the best trucks in the industry, so you arrive at your destination safely and in style. I truly love what I do. After all, I'm proud to be with MVT.
Join the Mesilla Valley Transportation family.
Thank you for tuning in. We have a question from the audience. Gentleman Shane Umpress asks, but he's asking Senator Souls, you've been there for 8 years. What have you accomplished while being in that position?
And thank you, and I appreciate that because I'm very pleased with what I have done. We have increased teacher salaries by approximately 15%. We have gotten over $500 million additional dollars for education. I have passed a law that requires doctors, when they're prescribing opioids, to co-prescribe naloxone. It is now a national model. It has been put out by the Council of State Governments and their model legislation for other states to pick up on because it saves lives. When people have overdoses of opioids that have been prescribed by physicians, and that happens in New Mexico, if they've got naloxone with them, it saves lives and has saved lives in New Mexico. Some of the legislation that I passed is anti-bullying legislation for our public schools, which has been very important. Here locally, I was the sponsor of legislation that started the Anna Age Aid Institute, which is now housed at New Mexico State University. It is the only one in the country that is dedicated to reducing and preventing child abuse. In New Mexico, in Las Cruces, Resilience Leaders is actively using that framework set up by the Anna Age Aid Institute to set up the 10 sectors that are necessary for survival and thriving of children to grow up in healthy communities, and is leading the nation. And that was legislation that I carried directly. There are numerous other bills that I've been a part of, been involved in, and have helped pass within New Mexico, including reducing the rate charged to people for predatory lending, where it's much lower than what it was where there were no caps. So lots of things that I'm pleased having been there.
Dave, you understanding that going up to Santa Fe, he does sit on the committee for education, but is there a committee that you would you like to sit on?
Well, since I've been doing a lot of research on education, I'd like to sit on the education committee. However, I'm 180 degrees out. I believe in school choice. And when I see how poor our stats are as far as education in New Mexico, I try to find solutions locally. And there's one locally at the Mesilla Valley Christian School. John Foreman, who's also running for a House seat, I think it's 52, he's the principal of that school. And in the 40 years Mesilla Valley Christian School has been in operation, they haven't had one child not graduate from high school. But our average rate of high school dropout in New Mexico is 25 to 30%. Not only that, but we spend about $10,000 to $16,000 a year per student per year in the state. John Foreman does it for $5,000 a year. So it's a better product at cheaper price. And it's like, I believe the parents are intelligent enough to pick where they want to send their kids to school. It's not about teaching children what the truth is. It's about teaching them how to learn, or teaching the truth that somebody wants to bring to you. It's like, just teach them how to learn. That's all. Then they'll be on their own. And I don't count higher education as school. To me, that's job training. So,
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
May I respond to some of that?
Yes, sir.
First, in New Mexico, the average cost that we spend per student is a little over $9,000 a year. It is not $12,000, and that is greatly bumped up by very small districts like Mosquito, where it's somewhere around $29,000 because of economy of scale. In Las Cruces, I think the amount we get in Las Cruces is on the order of $6,800 per student for educating them. So it's not nearly as large of a difference. And in New Mexico, there is not an opportunity for school choice everywhere. There are not school choice options in Hatch. There are not school choice options in Quemado or in Reserve or in places like that. And as a state senator, I represent the entire state, not just locally, where we do have some options for school choice, but they are not available to most poor kids.
All right, let's go ahead. Shirley?
Okay, sticking with the discussion on education, and I think it's really something that it's a discipline that's really one of the most important things that we should talk about. And I know that when you made your introduction, David, you talked about Senator Souls being the chair of education, the Senate Education Committee. And so you're for school choices, and that's fine. A lot of people like that. I think Senator Souls explained how in some of our very remote areas, and we're a very, very rural state, that's not available. District 37 has a 54% Hispanic rate. And based on that, what should New Mexico do to meet the requirements of the Martinez-Yazzie lawsuit?
Well, our Martinez-Yazzie lawsuit was about special ed children, I believe. The thing is, if you give the parents a choice, first off, the government takes our money in the form of revenue. It takes from natural resources and mineral rights. It takes in our taxes, and then it gives money back to us for education, for a poor education as far as I'm concerned. If you give parents the choice, and you give the parents the money to allow them to go, whether it's $9,000, whatever it is, give them the choice. Let them pick the school they want to, because actually it's bad enough that a person that has money can afford to send their child and spend the extra money to send their child to a school of their choice. But the poor people don't have that option. Somebody is working 2 and 3 jobs just to meet ends, and then they don't have an option. They're stuck in a public school system that doesn't work. Give them the choice.
Senator Souls, same question, Martinez-Yazzie lawsuit, and heaven knows it's been before your committee many times.
Thank you. The Martinez-Yazzie lawsuit was not just about special education, though it did include special education students. It was brought by Native American students. It was brought by Hispanic students. It was brought by students that are underserved socioeconomic status. And the lawsuit basically was that we have underfunded their education for years and years and years. It goes back 10 to 20 years. And New Mexico's Constitution has a clause in it that reads, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but the legislature shall provide for the public education of all children, for the sufficient education of all children in the state of New Mexico. And the lawsuit and the judge agreed that we are not providing for the sufficient education of all children in New Mexico. The moonshot, the $500 million that we put in, was the start over the last 2 years to start meeting the needs for a sufficient education in New Mexico. We have a long way to go. We've got lots more we need to do. We're working on trying to recruit enough teachers. That's part of the lawsuit. We are working on providing a socially and culturally relevant education for all students, because our Native children and our Hispanic children are not getting a socially and culturally relevant education in the current system. And in New Mexico, we have school choice for everyone. Children can go, parents can take their children to any school that is within the district or anywhere else in the state, provided there is space available. What we're talking about really are school vouchers, is taking public education money and putting it to private and religious schools, which means the students left in public schools have even fewer resources than the insufficient funds that we currently have been putting in. Thank you.
Right. Okay, well, you already asked Marcy.
I'm going to step away from education for just a moment. I think we hammered that a little bit. My next one's more of a constitutionality thing. When we talk about the red flag laws, which, you know, were definitely a hot point recently in what we did, in the Second Amendment, what are your stands on the Second Amendment as it pertains to the red flag laws, and what do you see moving forward in the future for New Mexico as it pertains to the red flag laws?
And again, thank you for the question. I mean, it's a very good question. To start with, I believe in the Second Amendment. I own guns, I hunt, I fish. You know, I've got shotguns, I've got a rifle, I've got muzzle loaders, you know, and so I'm not against owning of guns. The red flag laws really are about getting guns out of the hands of people that have shown a propensity towards violence, towards using them inappropriately, and allows us to temporarily remove those until the situation calms down, eases up, and is determined. It does require a judge to make those determinations. I think it's appropriate. It has been shown to save lives other places. Most guns and the violence, it has to do with accidents and domestic violence, and this puts kind of a pause time in order to let the situation cool down so that we're not picking up bodies afterwards.
I think the Second Amendment should not be touched at all, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, because there's a mistrust of our government, that if the government knows that you have a gun, they can take your gun away. And this is something that's why people do not want to get involved with any kind of registration or gun show loopholes or things like that. So it's a matter, I have a suggestion. If the NRA or any gun organization would give free training to anybody that wants it for guns, and then say when you go in for a driver's license, you would be passed and qualified as a person that could purchase a gun. That way, you're already qualified. Now, you're not saying that you're going to buy a gun, and you're not going to say what gun it is or what the serial number is. This way, people will be more confident that the government wouldn't try to take it away, only that you are permitted to purchase or carry a gun. So I think the red flag laws, you're stepping on people's toes. And we see around the country how there's cities that are burning. And, you know, how are you going to protect people when it takes an average of 10 minutes for a 911 call for the police to show up, but the average interaction time with the victim and the assailant is 90 seconds? You're in big trouble. You better have some personal protection. People are afraid the government is going to take their guns away. And if you've been to New York at the UN, which is a globalist organization, one of their sculptures is a pistol that's got a knot tied in the end of the pistol. So people do not trust the government. They think they want to take your guns away. Don't touch the Second Amendment.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead, and this will be our last questions for the candidates. About 20 years ago, we voted for a spaceport so that we could launch people into space. And the state of New Mexico taxed themselves, and then there was 3 counties that were asked, and we were one of them. And it wasn't a mandate. It lost by about maybe 243 votes. I mean, it won by 243 votes. It's getting ready to sunset. In light of, you know, would you support continuing to give money to the spaceport tax dollars from Doña Ana residents?
I would say with the right legislators, yes, because I think we have a big potential. I mean, the president wants to have Space Force, And I think there's a big potential out there for jobs and opportunities for residents in New Mexico. We can bring in a lot. But you have to have the right legislators to do that. I wouldn't say in the current state, no. I would say no, because we don't have the right people that want to bring in jobs. So I would say with the right legislators, me being one of them.
For the most part, I think I agree with Mr. Gallus in that while the spaceport we've put lots of money in, it has been slow to yield what it was promised and come to fruition, but it appears that it is getting close to that now. And you always have to look at what additional investment for the return on investment that you're going to get. And because we have such a huge investment in there now, to walk away from it when we're looking at the potential as Virgin Galactic is planning on flying by the end of the year. There's other companies, SpaceX, Spin Launch, other companies that are bringing in lots of jobs as we speak that are gearing up for additional programs and jobs. Putting additional money in is a good investment for the return that is on the horizon at this point. If you just look back on how much we put in, hindsight may be 2020 that we maybe shouldn't have started down the road to start with, but we have, and therefore looking forward, I think continuing to make the investments so that we can get that return is appropriate strategy.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys, a minute and a half just to appeal to the audience, the citizens, the people that are out there listening to ask for their vote. So you guys got about a minute and a half.
Who would you like to start?
Let's go ahead with Dave.
Okay. My job as a legislator would be to listen to the people and represent the people. And I think I have a pretty good idea of what the people want. But I have to get out into the community and find out. I know there's community centers, churches, any civic organizations that I want to get out and meet and talk to. And I really want to tap into the seniors, because the seniors have so much wisdom. They've been through everything. They know the game. So I would find out what the people want. I have my own opinions. I'm a Christian, constitutional, conservation, conservative. But I have to know what the people want. If it doesn't jive with my moral values, then I would have to say, we're going to have to discuss this or I'm going to have to leave. But I think I have a pretty good idea that people want traditional values in New Mexico. That's what I want to bring. I want to find out what you want, and I want to represent you.
All right, thank you. Senator.
And thank you. And again, I appreciate being here, and thank you for the very thoughtful questions from everyone. In that, I think this really gives people an opportunity to see that there is a clear choice in this particular race for New Mexico Senate District 37. I've provided the leadership over the last 8 years. I'm a proven leader. It was proven when I was on the school board here in Las Cruces. I was elected chair. The school board during that time was named School Board of the Year, and the district was the School District of the Year. I was elected to the New Mexico School Board Association, where I represented all of the very disparate districts within the state and was the state school board member of the year during that. I have a proven record of leadership. Education is where I am. It's what I do. It's who I am. And I want to make sure that children have a voice in Santa Fe who understands education, who understands the needs, who recognizes that investments in education are investments in the future of New Mexico. I hope that you'll support me for re-election in New Mexico. I want to be your voice in Santa Fe. I want to represent you for District 37. Again, my name is Bill Souls. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say thank you both very much for coming out. This was our first candidate forum on TV with you guys, so it was very interesting. I appreciate you both for coming out, and I wish you the best of luck on your campaign. With that, we're going to go ahead and I want to talk to you guys. How are you guys feeling?
Good. How are you?
Right on. So, we've got these candidates, and how did you feel with the questions you were asking, Marcy? How did it come up?
Well, I feel that the questions were good questions. I think they were well thought out questions. I think as David Gallus said, he's at a slight disadvantage in that some of the questions pertain to specific actions in the Senate, in the New Mexico Senate, that maybe he's not familiar with and that he might learn as time goes on. I think a disadvantage that both candidates have, and all candidates in New Mexico, is that with COVID, They can't go door to door. They can't go to senior centers. They can't go to rallies or to group meetings. And I know, Arturo, you've had big forums in outdoor and indoor community settings in the past. They can't do any of that. And I really feel for candidates because to a degree they're limited to this type of questioning and discussion. And I'm thankful to have it. Thank you to Las Cruces Channel for having this forum, but I do think it's a difficult time to campaign.
Mm-hmm. I certainly agree, with what Ms. Shirley Bacher was saying. It is hard. I mean, this is the year that they've had to reinvent how to campaign, because that has not, the standard 1A that you are well versed in after many years of service, has not happened, and that's very scary. But I also think that I think what's different between this year and any years before is in the past, we've had, especially in New Mexico, a tremendous amount of voter apathy. We've had people that didn't show up to vote. Our voter turnout is some of the lowest in the United States. And that voter apathy comes from the idea, well, who I elect or the government doesn't really affect me. Well, welcome to 2020, where we find out that what does affect you epically. And, one side or the other, it doesn't matter which side of the COVID battle you're on, whether you're up for keep it all open or keep it all closed, the government and who you elect does affect you. They affect every single piece of your everyday life. You may not have known it before, and certainly you were educated on it this year, and I think that's a really big piece for everybody to understand, is that it doesn't matter which way you vote. This isn't about personal politics. It doesn't matter which way you vote, but get out and vote.
Yeah.
Show up. Make sure your vote's counted. We can go back and forth about absentee ballots and not another, but make sure your vote's counted. Make sure you're there. Make sure you participate, because no matter which way you go, your voice matters in this state. And we truly need the legislatures and our government to reflect the will of the people. But unfortunately, when the people don't participate, their voices cannot be heard, and the will of the people cannot be reflected. So I think the most important thing is, do your research, check out and see what people stand for. One thing that is nice about 2020 is now everybody is digital, everybody's social media. Yeah. It's easy to find. You can research your candidate in about 5 minutes. Yeah. You don't get to attend any personal things anymore. Watch the debates, watch what they do. But the biggest thing really is show up and vote. Show up, make your voice heard, participate in government, and we need to get those numbers up. And when those numbers are high, the will of the people will be expressed. And whatever that will is, it is. But when only 7 to 10% of our voting public votes, you can't say that that's the will of the people. Yeah. And you can't overburden these guys and say, oh, well, you guys have to know what we want, when nobody's talking to them, when nobody's expressing themselves. So I think no matter what is important, do your research, get out there, get out the vote, make sure you show up to vote, make sure that your voice is counting. And I think that's so important. No matter how you get your information, that's really the most important thing about 2020, is that elections have consequences. That's the best way I can say it. Elections have consequences, and your participation does matter.
This year, I think we're going to have some interesting activity that perhaps is going to be utilized a lot more than we've had in the past, and that's because of COVID and a lot of people's fear of whether they want to go vote in person or not. The voters now will have an opportunity to send in a request for a mail-in ballot. And the people who say, well, I can't vote because I work, or I don't know, etc., now there's no more excuse, because we're making it easier than ever. You're going to I got mine in the mail today, my application for my absentee ballot, and we all have a chance to fill it out. The Doña Ana County Clerk is going to start sending out the ballots on October 3rd, and ballots will be sent out until October 20th. And I think the public needs to know when this is happening. Also, there will be early vote in person, not only at the county clerk's office, but at other remote sites. So, as you said, Marcy, there's no reason for people not to vote. And I do think that it's going to go up. The voting percentage is going to go up. For me and a lot of people I know, this is going to be the most profound election in our history of our country. So much is going to be determined by who gets in from top down or from bottom up. And the only way we're going to make that our voice heard is to vote. And I tell everybody, les digo a todos ustedes allá que entienden y que hablan español, su voto es su voz. Su voto es su voz, y si no votas, no puedes a quejar, no puedes a decir nada. You've got to vote, or don't complain, because your vote is your voice. And we're making it easier, safer, healthier, and more convenient than it's been in the past.
Well, thank you very much for both coming and doing the research. I really appreciate you both. I think you bring a lot to the table. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We were honored.
We were very
I'd like to
honored.
say also thank you to the viewers out there for watching. I hope you tell your friends. Next week we're going to have Senate District 31, I believe, was Senator Joseph Cervantes,
Wednesday.
and Wednesday, yes, Wednesday, was Senator Cervantes and a gentleman, John Roberts, the challenger. That will be Wednesday at 7 p.m. this coming week. I want to say thank you to the viewers out there and for the questions and paying attention also. I'd like to also say thank you to our sponsors, Mesilla Valley Transportation, Southwest Organizing Project, and the Las Cruces Channel Network. Thank you, and have a good night. Vote to live. Live to vote.